Hey everyone, today I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about useEffectEvent. UseEffect has a lot of controversies, issues over the years. The React team always tried to solve the issues, and the useEffectEvent hook is one of those attempts. So in this video, we're gonna first talk about what problem does this new hook solves, how do we use it. I'll be also explaining some other terms like reactive, effect, event, etc. that you'll find all over the documentation. So let's get started and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. So the first question is, what problem does this solve? In simple words, it solves the problem of this linting issue, Exhaustive-Deps. So when we use the useEffect hook, the linter asks you to add the dependencies. But in some situations, adding some dependencies is actually unnecessary. It can cause you bugs. But if you don't add them, you'll get linter error or warnings. Previously, we didn't have a solid solution until React released the useEffectEvent hook. With the help of this new hook, we will be able to extract our non-reactive logic from the effect function. But what are these terms, reactive, effect, event? So let me explain them in a bit more detail. I think it's important to understand them. You'll find them all over the documentation. I haven't seen any useEffectEvent tutorial where they explain these terms, but if you're not interested, you can skip this part and directly go to the coding part. So we have three terms, reactive, effect, and event. So first, reactive. Reactive are some values that can re-render the component, like states and props. As a basic, you all know that when you change the state or the prop, it will cause the component to re-render. So these are valid reactive values, but this simple variable is not reactive. If you reassign the variable, change the value, it will not re-render the component. Then you have the idea of effect. Effect is just a function that runs automatically when a reactive value like state and props are updated. So in simple word, an effect function runs in React to those reactive value like state and prop. So here I have a simple example of a chat room app. So every time the user changes the room ID, we always want our chat app to connect to that chat room automatically, like we are doing it here. That's why it is an effect function. And they are executed every time a reactive value like state and prop is updated. Then you have event. An event handler or an event function always runs when some interactions has happened. For example, a user has clicked a button or typing something on the input. An example would be this. In a chat app, you don't want to send the message automatically when a state or prop is changed. You always want your user to click on that send button, then you will send the message. So that's the difference between effect and event. There's another simple way to think about this. You can ask yourself this question: should my function run automatically? If yes, then it's an effect. If no, then you can ask another question. Should it run on interaction? If yes, then it will be an event. Otherwise, it's just a normal function. To learn more about this, I would highly recommend reading the documentation, not just this page, but also, where was that? Go to this link and start reading this documentation page. It is really helpful to understand all of this. I can even make an entire video about explaining all of this stuff. If you want me to do it, please let me know in the comment section. There's another thing you should know, which is reactive logic. We know reactive values are states and props that can re-render the component, and the reactive logic is a function or a logic of a function that should only run whenever the state or prop is changed. For example, that chat room connection example, you only want to run this whenever that state is changed. So that's why it is the reactive logic. On the other hand, non-reactive logic should be done on interaction. like sending the message when a user clicks on the button. So enough of these theories. Let's get into the code. Then you'll find all this information relevant. So I have this starter code with the Next.js project. I will also add the Git repos so that you can play along. So first we are importing this library Toastify for displaying notification. It is not necessary, just for demonstration. And this show function will just show a notification. It is not that important. Then we have this create connection function to mimic a real implementation of connecting to a server. The logic inside is not important. And then we have our app component. We have this use state. One is for room ID, another one is for theme. Then we have this theme variable, and we have this useEffect hook. Basically, we are connecting to the chat room whenever the room ID is changed. Then we have this drop down for changing the room ID. And then we have a checkbox to toggle between dark and light. So that's pretty much the starter code. And this is what it looks like. So if I go to this useEffect function, this function should run every time the room ID is changed. And when the connection is successful, we will run this callback function. So I will just add a console log. I will open up the console. If I change the room ID, then this callback function is executed. And if you have seen the explainer part, you know that this function is actually an effect function because it runs automatically when the state is changed and the logic is reactive. This works, but the problem arrives when you want to add a non-reactive logic inside the effect function, or in simple words, when you want to use a state or prop inside this effect function, but you don't want to add that in the dependency. For example, I can call the show notification function. I want to show notification every single time we connect to a room. This function actually takes two parameters, message and the theme, which is this state. So watch what happens when I pass a message like this one. And if I pass the theme as well, now we have a linting warning. It says that the useEffect has a missing dependency of theme. Include it or remove the dependency array. This is a problem, right? We want to use our theme state, but we don't want to include it in the dependency, because if I add that to the dependency, every time I change the theme, this function will run. We don't want to do that. We don't want to create connection every single time when our theme is changed. So let me prove it to you. I will change the room. I get a notification, which makes sense. But if I change the theme, we also get the notification, which is totally unnecessary. So what would be the solution? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Previously, you might want to do something like this. You will remove this dependency and add a ESLint disable comment. And now we don't get any warning and our app should work fine. But this is not an actual solution. This is like running away from the problem. This can lead you more bugs. Think of it like this. Let's say I remove this room ID from the dependency, which is actually required, but I'm not getting any kind of error or warning from the linter. Now our app shouldn't work the way we wanted. If I change the room, see, we don't get any kind of notification. So this is not a solution. I will add the room ID again and remove this comment. So what could be other solution? We can just extract this function to a separate function. Let's try that and see if it works or not. Let's call it onConnected. And I will pass that here. We still have a linting issue. useEffect has a missing dependency on connected. If I add the function to the dependency, it will cause you more problems because every single time this component is re-rendered, this onConnected function will be recreated and the effect function will run again and again. So that's not a solution. You might think adding a useCallback hook might help. So let's try that. useCallback. And I need to add the dependency, which is theme. And now add the function to the dependency. Now this onConnected function will be recreated only if the theme is changed. So if I change the room ID, it works. But if I change the theme, we still get that same problem. So useCallback hook isn't also a solution. I will comment this out. So what is actually the solution? The solution here is the useEffectEvent hook. The syntax is simple. You just need to call this useEffectEvent and pass a callback function. That's it. So let's add that. useEffectEvent. We don't need any kind of dependency. We don't need to add that here. So let's try. Okay, it's working. And now I'm changing the theme and we don't see the notification. So the useEffectEvent hook has solved our problem, right? What this useEffectEvent hook has done is that it has allowed us to extract this non-reactive logic like this from our effect function. Like I mentioned, our effect function should only run whenever our state is changed. But the problem arrives whenever we want to add some non-reactive logic like this, which shouldn't run every time we change the state. And the return of this function is actually called an effect event function. You can also pass arguments to this function like the new room ID. Let's say I also want to display the new room ID inside the notification. And I will adjust it here. Now let's try. And now room travel is connected or room music is connected. So it's working. The thing I want to demonstrate is this logic. You'll find this on the documentation. There will be sometimes passing an argument to this effect event function is gonna be helpful. So let's say I will comment this entire thing. I will also remove the dependency. Now I just want to run this onConnected function. So every time our room ID is changed, I want to run this onConnected function. I will pass the room ID. Now I get a linting error because I forgot to add the room ID to the dependency, and without that dependency, the effect won't run. So now I can just add the room ID. And that is the benefit of passing an argument. If I use the room ID state directly over here, then I don't need to pass the room ID here. And even if I don't include the room ID on the dependency, I still don't get any kind of warning. And our app shouldn't work the way we want it. You see, we don't get any kind of notification. So that's the benefit of passing an argument sometimes. But if I add theme here, now I'm getting this warning, you need to add the theme. So you don't want to do that for every state or prop. You only want to do that when the specific state or prop is required as a dependency, but also needed in the effect event function. And you can only call this effect event function in effect hooks. And by effect hook, I mean not only just useEffect, but also useLayoutEffect and useInsertionEffect. You don't want to pass that function as a prop or call it inside a normal function. And also remember that this is not a dependency shortcut. Do not use this hook to avoid specifying dependency in your effect. This can hide bugs and make your code harder to understand. Only use this hook to extract logic that does not depend on changing values like state and props. So that's pretty much you need to know about this useEffectEvent hook. I've tried to explain everything in depth and as simply as I could. If the video has been helpful for you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. If you have any kind of question, please do let me know in the comments. And if you're using Linux and you want to add these cool live wallpapers on your desktop, then you can check out this video on my other channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.